This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. What's wrong? You're not satisfied? The man in green raised his eyebrows as if he had understood what was going on. He smiled and said, "It seems that brother is also an old hand. You don't even take a fancy to these small entry-level things. I have more." He flipped his hand and a few more books appeared. This time, they were even more mysterious. He said in a low voice, "This thing could have been created by a senior maidservant of the Jiang family of the Red Moon City." There were a total of 3 books, namely, A Deep Understanding of Jiang Ruobing's Personality and Preferences, Advanced Theory and Practical Course on How to Converse with Jiang Ruobing, and Analysis of the 5 Great Attractions of Picking Up Girls in Red Moon City. Yunxiao felt a little dizzy. He was about to get his temporary identity, but the other party was determined to sell it to him. So, he had no choice but to take out a supreme-grade primordial stone and exchange for it. That's the way. She's the second daughter of the Jiang family, a classic example of Bai Meifu. Which man wouldn't want her? The green-robed man kept the vitality stones with satisfaction. After receiving his temporary identity, he ran off like a wisp of smoke. Do you want a temporary identity or a permanent identity? The Red Moon City's staff said indifferently, as if he was extremely tired of this job. I'll do a temporary one, Yunxiao said after a moment of thought. I'll leave after I buy some materials. N. The man threw out a crystal card and said, "Record your personal information and leave your divine sense mark. People from the eastern region just have to pay 1,000 mid-grade primordial stones, and those from the outer region have to pay 5,000. Leaving a spiritual awareness imprint would basically record all of a person's characteristics and information. What was even more terrifying was that the other party could track your location through this crystal card. But, none of this was a problem for Yunxiao. With his cultivation base in alchemy, he could easily change and forge the records at will. 5,000 mid-grade origin stones? It's just a temporary status and it's already so expensive? It wasn't that he didn't want to give it to them, but he felt that it was too much of a scam. Charging 15,000 per person? No wonder Red Moon City could become one of the 7 superpowers. Why didn't they join the Merchant Union instead? The Merchant Union was even better at doing business and was even more shady. That's right. Usually, there are only 200 people in this region and 800 people in the outer regions. How did it suddenly increase so much? Many people behind him also complained about the rising prices. The cultivator raised his head and snorted coldly, "If you're poor, then don't come to the Red Moon City. This isn't a place for you country bumpkins. Also, don't think that I don't know your intentions in coming to the Red Moon City. You're here for the second miss. For this reason, we've already prepared the information for you with the concept of quality service. Don't you need to pay for the information?" He threw out a few books and said, "Pay for the card, these materials are all supplementary." Yunxiao looked over and saw that they were the 3 books, A Deeper Understanding of Jiang Ruobing's Character and Preferences. His face immediately darkened, and when he turned around, the man in green had long disappeared. "My lord, you see, I'm almost 100 years old, and I'm only an ordinary great martial master. It's impossible for me to participate in the joust for a spouse event. I don't want these books, but can you reduce the cost of the card?" A trembling old man asked carefully. "Pa." The staff member slammed the table and said angrily, "Do the rules of the Red Moon City have to be broken for you, an old man who can't die? If you want to make an exception, you can go and get the city lord's order. With the city lord's order, you can make an exception." How could a person who had the ability to get the city lord's handwritten order come to apply for a card and be exploited? At the teleportation array, there was a special mirror that could observe the strength of every martial artist who entered the teleportation array of Red Moon City. Once there was a martial honor cultivation level, there would be a special female servant to receive the guests. For those below the rank of martial honor, they would follow the regulations on the management of minions. They had to go through the relevant procedures and undergo unified management. Yun Shao had been using a secret technique to hide his cultivation base, so he was only a 5-stars martial grandmaster. Even the Mirror of Truth could not reflect his cultivation base, which was why he was mistaken as a lackey and called here to apply for a card. After completing the temporary identity card, he headed to the exit. There was a crystal that was specially used to detect identity cards. He just had to place his card on it and he would be able to pass. The guard glanced at the crystal and looked at the information inside with a slightly surprised expression. He muttered to himself, Xiaohou Jian? They were from the Xiaohou family of Windfall City. They should have permanent identity cards. Whatever, it was probably the young master of the Xiaohou family who had come out on his own to try his luck. House Xiaohou is nothing but a grain of sand in the Red Moon City. The guard was only surprised for a moment, but he didn't care much and continued to check the people behind. A short but strong old man walked over with an unhappy expression. He kept mumbling, "It's so expensive to teleport here from the Blood God Palace. It's all that kid's fault. He didn't even make it convenient for me to teleport here for free." Respecting the old and cherishing the young is a traditional virtue in the realm of heavenly martial arts. The young people nowadays are getting more and more unruly and indifferent. The man was the old man who had struck up a conversation with Yun Shao in the Blood God Palace and wanted to teleport with him. He took out a permanent identity card, swiped it on the crystal, and walked over, still grumbling. The guard could only hear him saying intermittently, "I'm already so old, but I'm still not allowed to retire. It's too much for the chief to unilaterally delay my retirement age. God knows when the new palace master will come," and so on. The guard felt strange when he heard this. He looked at the crystal record and his expression changed slightly. Tyrannical Sky Tiger, the 5th brother of Death God Palace. After passing the teleportation array's checkpoint, they could be considered to have truly entered Red Moon City. It was a place full of flowers and brocades, with heavy traffic and bustling crowds, most of them in a hurry. However, there were also many young faces in the crowd, looking like they were leisurely shopping. They should be the young talents who had come after hearing the news. He didn't have any impression of the Jiang family's second miss. Judging by her age, this little girl had probably just been born when he came to the Red Moon City last time. The entire Jiang family's system was huge, but Jiang Ruobing must be a blood relative of the Jiang family's direct line to be able to trigger such a big event. Peach fragrance, a specialty of Red Moon City. It's an authentic peach fragrant wine that can only be drunk in the city lord's mansion. One mouthful is equivalent to a month's worth of cultivation. In a restaurant, dozens of jars of fine wine were neatly stacked outside, and a strong aroma drifted in. The waiter in front of the door shouted with all his might, "This wine is brewed with the 100-mile peach flowers from the south of the Red Moon City. It's not only fragrant, but it's also refreshing and can quench one's thirst." During a happy occasion, of course, it's the fragrance of peaches. As Yun Shao smelled the wine, he seemed to be reminded of the scene. A lonely look flashed across his face as he stepped forward and said, "2 jars, please." "All right. Your Excellency, one look and I can tell that you have a good eye. At such a young age, you already know what's good. After drinking our peach wine, you will definitely have good luck." With a wry smile, Yun Shao put away the 2 jars of wine and sighed. "Since you're here, let's go meet some good friends." He looked around and walked towards one of the shops. It was the place that sold and rented the south-pointing chariot. There was a clear rule in the Red Moon City that those who were not from the city were not allowed to fly in the air without permission. The entire Red Moon City was extremely large, spanning thousands of miles. Over the years, it had continued to expand. This meant that the south-pointing chariot had to be used for long distances. Moreover, this south-pointing chariot had an extremely good characteristic, which was that it could fly at a low altitude. However, a temporary identity card was also required to drive the south-pointing chariot. This way, he could grasp the movement of every martial artist in the city at any time. Yun Shao bought the fastest one, and after inserting a temporary identity card into it, he suddenly spread his 2 iron wings and took off into the air, flying in a certain direction. There were south-pointing chariots flying around in the sky, all within a height of 100 meters from the ground. This was also the allowed altitude of the south-pointing chariots in Red Moon City. Once they went out of the range, there was a risk of death. After flying for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they arrived at a remote house. It was far away from the bustling downtown area of Red Moon City. There were several miles of fertile farmland, mountains, and lakes, just like a paradise. Yunxiao landed gently and looked over. A peach tree was swaying in the breeze, with white tender shoots growing on its branches, which were reflected in the lake like a carved jade, emitting a warm green light. The faint fragrance of peach flowers and the faint sorrow lingering in the wind made Yunxiao's melancholy drift away. On this day last year, in this sect, the human face and peach blossom reflected each other in red. My face has disappeared, but the peach flowers are still smiling in the spring breeze. He recited softly and went up to sit directly under the peach tree. He took out 2 jars of peach fragrant wine and drank it alone. He sighed softly and said, "I don't think the name of this wine is good at all. I think it should be called Sorrow of Intoxication." Yunxiao picked up a jar and poured it into his mouth alone. He drank with great loneliness. "Who is it? You actually came to this forbidden area." Suddenly, an extremely sharp voice resounded in the air, as if it had done something that made him extremely indignant, and it even trembled a little. A shadow flickered in the air. Without even seeing the person's face, the wind from the palm was sharp and merciless. The emperor's qi was everywhere, locking down the space. Yunxiao's body trembled. Although the voice was a little distorted due to anger, he had already recognized who it was. However, under the current circumstances, how could they recognize each other? How could the other party trust him? An old face flashed in front of his eyes, but it was more weathered and worn down by time than in his memory. AI. Yunxiao let out a sigh as he opened the heavenly eye on his forehead. The power of thunder tribulation suddenly blasted out, immediately breaking a crack in the spatial seal of the Emperor Qi of the 9 heavens. Then, he turned into a thunderbolt and shot out a blue beam that covered 1,000 meters in an instant, causing the palm strike to miss. The newcomer's expression changed. If his palm power hit, it was very likely to destroy the surrounding objects. His body twisted in the air forcefully and blasted the palm power into the lake. Boom! A shocking water dragon rushed up, hundreds of meters high. After it broke, it fell down like a waterfall, and water vapor scattered in the air. The lake water that was like a waterfall was like sparse rain, floating in the air. A beautiful woman in palace clothes stood by the lake. Her expression was cold, and her eyes flashed with coldness. Her hands formed a seal, and a force spread out from her hand seal. The water vapor that filled the sky behind her condensed and turned into a shocking dragon in the air, circling around her. Just as she was about to make a move, she suddenly saw a jar of peach wine under the peach tree. Her body trembled and she exclaimed, "Who are you?" Voila! The stream of blue water fell into the lake and shattered into pieces. The wind blew past, and the fine threads fell like rain. Yunxiao looked at the familiar face, which had now become old, and sighed softly. He stretched out his hand, and a strong wind blew out. A falling leaf in the distance rolled into his hand, then gently folded it and put it in his mouth to blow. The breath shook the leaves, making a crisp sound, like a bird touching the water or an oriole chirping. In the drizzle and under the peach flowers, it gradually sounded. Her eyes, which were filled with killing intent, were gradually melted by the warmth in her heart under the music and the peach blossoms. The beautiful woman quietly listened to the drizzle, the peach blossoms, and the mournful chirping. The two of them were speechless. A faint sorrow lingered in the wind. The scene in front of them, accompanied by the soft sound, was cold and quiet. The one playing it was sad, and the listener was sad. After a long time, the song ended, and there was only the sound of the rain and the falling flowers. Yunxiao gently moved his hand, and the leaf was blown away by the wind. "Let's have a drink together." The beautiful woman reached out and removed the mud seal from the jar of peach wine under the peach tree. She took a sip and said, "This wine is fake. You've been tricked." "This is not peach wine," Yunxiao said with a smile. "It's called getting drunk and forgetting sorrow." The beautiful woman savored the name and said, if there is such a wine in the world, then no matter how much money I spend, it will be worth it. She raised the wine jar and gulped it down, as if she was very happy. But why can't I get drunk and forget my worries? The beautiful woman asked. She was startled. She paused and suddenly said, do you know the difference between drinking and drinking? A look of reminiscence flashed in Yunxiao's eyes as he took a big gulp of wine and said, I heard from a friend that the more you drink, the warmer you feel, but water. The more you drink, the colder it gets. The beautiful woman was startled. She then laughed miserably and said, but why is it that the more I drink, the colder this wine gets? Yunxiao put the wine jar back under the peach tree and said seriously, because your heart has always been cold and has never been warm. The peach blossoms fell and the water trickled away. The two of them were speechless for a while. Humans have their joys and sorrows, and the moon has its ups and downs, Yunxiao thought. There are always regrets in life, but you can't always indulge in regrets, then you will never be able to become a full moon and clear sky. The beautiful woman's eyes were filled with sadness as she muttered to herself, can my heart still be fulfilled? We can. It's because of him that your heart is complete, Yunxiao said seriously. It's because of him that your heart is complete. If he was still alive, he wouldn't want to see you in this state. I still remember Morongzhu's last words to you, don't take revenge, don't hate, live on happily. This was his last hope, but you have disappointed him. The beautiful woman's body trembled violently, and her eyes were filled with complicated emotions. She looked at Yunxiao and said, it seems that you must be the descendant of an old friend on the purple cloud peak outside of the Red Moon City. I wonder who your elder is. Yunxiao's expression was a little strange as he said, it's a little complicated, and I can't explain it at the moment. I only came here to pay my respects to Big Brother Morongzhu. The beautiful woman nodded. You've already expressed your feelings. No matter who your elders are, the few people on the purple cloud peak were my good friends from the past. Please send my regards to him. N. Yes, Yunxiao nodded and said, I hope you can get out of the moon soon and not sink into the abyss again. After all, there are many people who care about you in this world. As for this kasaya, you can keep it and slowly enjoy it. I hope it can help you forget your worries. Yunxiao gave the peach tree a brief look, then turned and left. The beautiful woman looked at his figure and frowned as she fell into deep thought. Suddenly, she said, since you are the descendant of my old friend, if you have any difficulties in the Red Moon City, you can come to me at any time. Yunxiao stopped and chuckled. I do have something to do. If I can't do it, I won't be polite with you. Yunxiao's figure gradually disappeared in front of her eyes, and only a faint poem could be heard. The joy of separation is the pain of separation, and there are even more foolish children. As the saying goes, the clouds cover 10,000 li, the snow covers 1,000 mountains, to whom does a shadow go? The beautiful woman was stunned when she heard this. She looked at the peach tree. After the drizzle, the flower buds bloomed one by one under the clear sky. She was dazed for a moment. Master. Suddenly, a melodious female voice sounded and a white figure flew down from the sky, gently landing in front of the beautiful woman. Those who could fly freely in the Red Moon City were either people of the Red Moon City or those who had the approval of the Red Moon City. A pure and pleasant face with a flawless and innocent smile pressed against her and said, Master, what are you thinking about? Why did it seem like it rained here? It's so clear. Only then did the beautiful woman slowly come back to her senses and smile. It's just that the air is a little dirty, so I just cleaned it up. Wash? The young girl rolled her eyes in a strange manner and her gaze fell on the peach tree. She exclaimed, Master, why did you drink? The beautiful woman was startled. She snorted and said, What's so strange about drinking? Master is in the mood. Can't we drink? The young girl pointed with her finger and said with a smile, Then why are there 2 jars? Master would definitely say to buy 2 jars to drink slowly, but why did they all open them? And they've all been drunk? The beautiful woman was speechless for a moment and said angrily, Do you need to meddle in your master's affairs? I'll drink as many as I like. The young girl smiled cheekily and hugged the bear-like woman. She said in a coquettish manner, "What's the good news? Tell me quickly so that I can be happy too. I'm very curious who has such great ability to make Master's mood better. I must learn from him and make Master happy every day." There was no master-disciple rule between the two. Instead, they were like a pair of sisters, extremely close. The beautiful woman felt a slight warmth in her heart as she recalled what Yunxiao had just said. After all, there are still many people in this world who care about you, and at least this disciple was one of them. She was a little curious, but she still kept a straight face and pretended to be angry. She snorted, "Who told you that your master is in a good mood? Don't tell me that you're going to take the dye workshop just because I gave you some colors." The young girl laughed. "Master, the wrinkles on your face have betrayed you. Every time you smiled at me, the corners of your eyes would be wrinkled. I knew that Master was faking a smile, pretending to be happy. But now, Master was looking at me with a straight face, and I couldn't see any wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, so I knew that you were really happy. Ruobing hasn't seen Master so happy for a long time, so I really want to know who has such great ability to make Master really happy." The beautiful woman's body trembled slightly as she raised her hand to touch her cheeks. She was filled with infinite melancholy as she softly said, "The corner of his eyes? It seems that Master is indeed old." She couldn't tell if she was happy or sad, but her disciple cared so much about her and observed her so carefully, so she should at least be very pleased. Perhaps, it was time for him to walk out of his lowest point, whether it was for himself, the people around him who cared about him, or even Brother Zhu's expectations of him. Seeing the beautiful woman's melancholy, the young girl immediately became nervous and anxious. She waved her hands and hurriedly said, "Master isn't old at all. She's Ruobing's good elder sister. Ruobing has said the wrong thing." The beautiful woman glared at her and snorted, "You're so rude. Tell me, what grievances do you have? Master, what do you mean by this? Can't I come to find you for no reason?" the young girl said playfully. "I don't come here every time I have something to do." The young girl immediately became unhappy. She turned around and went to the peach tree. Suddenly, she sniffed out of curiosity, then picked up the jar of wine Yunxiao had left on the ground and was about to drink it. The beautiful woman wanted to stop her. After all, it had been drunk by a young man, and it seemed somewhat inappropriate, but it was too late. The young girl had already raised the jar and drank a mouthful. She usually drank wine with the glass and tasted it carefully. She had never drunk so boldly and rudely. She was not used to it, so she took a big gulp and choked on it. Her face suddenly turned red and she coughed violently. "Master, is this really peach wine? How could it be so different from our Red Moon City's peach wine?" The young girl only felt that it was extremely unsightly and did not want to drink a second mouthful. She looked at the label on the wine jar and it indeed said, "Red Moon City's authentic peach wine." She immediately understood and called out, "I know, we're drinking peach wine, and this wine is called Red Moon City's authentic peach wine, not the same kind of wine. Master, am I right?" The beautiful woman looked at her bitter melon-like face and chuckled, "Right or wrong, this wine might have been called Red Moon City's authentic peach wine, but now it's called Sorrow Drunk, at least that's what these two jars are called." Drunkard's Sorrow? The young girl was stunned. She carefully savored the name and lowered her head to look at the wine jar in her hand. She actually put it to her mouth and drank it again. "Ruobing, are you troubled by your marriage again?" The beautiful woman's heart trembled as she asked gently. This young girl was the main character who had attracted the attention of the world and filled the entire Red Moon City with young talents. Jiang Ruobing. She drank for a while. This time, she had the experience of drinking from a jar, so she drank more smoothly. She drank a lot in one go before putting it down. She smiled and said, "Master, this wine. I can indeed taste that kind of sorrow forgetfulness from drinking it." The beautiful woman suddenly felt a pain in her heart and quickly snatched the wine away, gently saying, "As a woman of the Jiang family, who can make their own decisions on their own marriage. Not to mention the Jiang family, even in the entire realm of heavenly martial arts, which daughter of those super forces is not a bargaining chip for a marriage alliance?"